The results of the America Fest 2025 straw poll have been released by Blake Neff, the producer of the Charlie Kirk Show. Well, they've been released by TPUSA. I'm reading Blake Neff's thread showing these results. So let me tell you something. The results are bad news for the for the Tucker Candace Fuentes wing of the of the right wing, because people, the 87% of respondents still very pro Israel, among other things. Um, fertility rate. There's one piece of news in here that I am very excited for. It's not even the Israel thing; it's something else. But um, there's all kinds of results. But there's also one that's a bit of a mind blow, that the birth rate is not a super high priority for America Fest. The people that attended AmFest, which is surprising to me. That was a big shock to me. But yeah, shout out to Blake Neff. The TPUSA straw poll from AmFest is out. JD Vance won the 2028 nomination straw poll by more than Donald Trump won in 2024. More than Donald Trump won the 2024 one we did 2 years ago. So yeah, look, JD Vance, look at that. Fucking 84.2% of respondents said they wanted JD Vance to be the nominee. Marco Rubio came in second. Ron DeSantis came in third with only 2.9% of the vote. Donald Trump Jr. came in with 1.8%. Donald Trump Jr. has said numerous times over the years he has no interest in running for president. Now, tons of people have said that and then ended up doing it anyway. But when Don Jr. says it, I tend to believe him. I don't think he I don't think he wants to be president. It's surprising that Glenn Youngkin, though, was an option. Then you got 2.5% undecided. You got 3.1% who wrote in a potential candidate, but of course nobody. They didn't release who all got wrote in. That would have been handy, though. Now, if JD Vance is as invested in Turning Point's data as a lot of people would be, this shows that Marco Rubio being his running mate, at least among the TPUSA audience, would probably be his best bet. Um, I think, and I'd said that before. I've said that months ago, that I think that his running mate will most likely be Marco Rubio. Will be his VP. Um, the only other people I think it could be, he could kind of rebuild the bridge with the DeSantis wing of the party by making DeSantis his running mate, which would probably not be a bad idea. I still think Rubio would probably be the guy, but DeSantis would not be a bad choice. They're both, well, Rubio and DeSantis are both from Florida, so it keeps the Ohio-Florida connection going on. But also DeSantis, like I said, still has his loyalists. I think that the overlap between people who like DeSantis, people who like Trump, and then the Venn diagram of people, DeSantis people, Trump people, and then people that like Rubio in the cabinet, I think there's a lot of overlap there. So while I think Marco Rubio would please a lot of people, I don't know. I think we could probably bring the JD Vance seems to be very concerned with keeping the coalition together and expanding it. So Ron DeSantis as his running mate might not be a bad decision, specifically if he wants to try to bring a few of the Never Trumpers along with him. I mean, I know I even agree with this, that a lot of the MAGA people who've been diehard MAGA for years is fuck the Never Trumpers. We don't want them. I mean, I kind of agree with JD Vance that we do need to try to keep the coalition together, and we do have to expand it. I do think we need a bit of gatekeeping. I don't think we need to gatekeep everybody out, but I do think there's some elements that we need to kind of whoa, no, you're not invited. But no, I think a few of the Never Trumpers, especially the DeSantis people, could be brought around if DeSantis was the right hand guy. The only other option I think, other than Rubio or DeSantis for JD Vance's running mate, would probably be, and a lot of people are going to give me shit for this, especially. I feel like if Jake Var sees this video, he'll bust my balls about it. But would be Tulsi Gabbard. I do think Tulsi Gabbard would probably be a decent running mate pick. Um, we'll see what happens. But no, I really do think Rubio's the guy, or possibly DeSantis. I could live with either one. Uh, I'm not even sure what this image is. Are these the are these the write-ins? Maybe these are the write-ins. Uh, Donald Trump, 82.6%. Yeah, these must be the write-ins. These must be the people that wrote in. One person wrote in Chris Christie. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that these are the write-ins, but it's funny that one person wrote in Chris Christie. One person. 12 people wrote in Nikki Haley. 65 people wrote in Vivek. I'm genuinely surprised by that. Um, 85 people. Well, here's the reason why I don't think these might be the write-ins, because like 85 people wrote in Ron DeSantis, even though it appears that he was an option on the poll. I don't know. Maybe they just weren't reading. I don't know. Anyway, moving on. Trump's cabinet is very popular. Pam Bondi is the only member to have disapproval in the double digits, with about 29% having a negative view. It should be higher than that. Pam Bondi kind of sucks at this. Um, Cash Patel should have been Attorney General. It really should. Cash Patel should have been Attorney General. It could have got a different head of the FBI. Um, yeah, look, Marco Rubio has a 78.6% approval rating as Secretary of State. And, like, God, me and Liar both said this, that we were not happy whenever Rubio got tapped for Secretary of State because we thought he was a little too neocon. Like, we weren't sure about this. Like, I definitely was skeptical. I think Liar was less skeptical than I was, but I was definitely super skeptical. And now look at him. 78.6% strongly approve, 14.3% somewhat approve, only 1.3% somewhat disapprove. I'd say that's the anti-Israel people because he put on the hat and prayed at the wall. Well, 1.3, 1%, and then 4.8. So what is that? 1, 2, 6. So that would be 7.1% of respondents probably disapproved of Marco Rubio. Some of them probably for other reasons, but I'd say that the or no, I'm sorry, 4.8 were unsure. I was misreading that. My bad. So yeah, only 2.3% of people disapprove of Marco Rubio, and I imagine those are the people who are mad because he put on the small hat and touched the wall. But anyway, Scott Bessent got 62% strongly approve. Wow, his uh and 20%, 20.2% somewhat approve. Pete Hegseth got 83.3% strongly approve. He got the highest approval rating among Pete Hegseth got the highest approval rating among all respondents, which is not surprising to me because Pete Hegseth is fucking based. And but yeah, look, Pam Bondi only 32.9% strongly approve of her. 31.9% somewhat approve of her. 15.6% somewhat disapprove, 13.4% strongly disapprove. I would have been on the somewhat disapprove train because I have praised some of the things she's done. You go back, check my backlog. She's done a couple things that I liked, but obviously the handling of the Epstein files was a giant cock up. Um, yeah. Yeah, Doug Burgum got 45.6%. I think, you know, 28.2% were unsure. That's just because he's been so low key. He's not been out doing like a lot of press. And if he has, I just haven't seen it. Look, RFK Jr., Secretary of Health and Human Services, 80.8%. He's the second highest approved member of Trump's cabinet after Pete Hegseth. But yeah, Pam Bondi is the least approved and most strongly disapproved of. So, Kristi Noem out here at 72.8%. She's doing pretty well. So yeah, his cabinet is overall very popular, with Pam Bondi seeming to be the one outlier. Again, now this I can't remember how many people attended AmFest this year, and then of the people that attended, how many of them actually took this poll. So I don't know what kind of sample size we're dealing with. But if there is anything, if it's any indication of the general feelings on the ground, um, I think Trump should heavily consider replacing Bondi as Attorney General. At least, I mean, he might not do it because he's like, this is my last term. Here in a couple, I don't want to bog down, I don't want to bog down the White House with firing Bondi and then replacing her. JD's going to come along. He's probably going to win, and then he can have his own Attorney General. That might be the thinking coming out of the White House, which is not a bad. It's not a bad take. I mean, again, she's done things I like, so she's overall not great. Like, I'm not happy with her overall, but she's done some stuff I like. So, the poll asked a question about how attendees view Israel. Despite a lot of noise online and some on stage, only 13% believe that Israel is not an ally of the United States. So that's bad news for the Tucker, Candace, Fuentes wing of the crowd. Is that despite their best efforts, the at least the TPUSA wing of the right wing is still very much pro-Israel, and it seems most people are in you know are in my section of the camp, which is to say Israel is an ally. Are they a top ally? I don't think so. Like I said, in my opinion, Israel's probably in. I'd have to actually take the time to give you a. I would have to like take the time to give you a full top 10 list of all of America's allies, but they're probably in my top 10 list, but they're not in my top 5. I think I've talked about that on the podcast before. Back on Glamour Chronicles when I was still doing that, the weekly pod. I uh, I think Israel is an ally, a valuable one, but like I said, they're not my top 5. They're probably top 10 though. But yeah, 33.3% of respondents believe they're a top ally. 53.4% believe they are one of them, and that's a total of 86.7. 86.7 percent of respondents believe that Israel is an ally to the United States. So like I said, that's a bad that's bad news. Bad news for the Tucker wing of. It kind of makes you think that Tucker probably doesn't have as much influence as he thinks he does. That Charlie Kirk was likely far more influential on the ground than Tucker Carlson is. Crazy to think that, considering how popular Tucker's been for the last 10, 15 years, but it just seems to be the case. At least if this poll is anything to go by. Look at this cope. Look at this cope over here. All that means is that TPUSA no longer represents America. Also lends credence to ask why Kirk was assassinated. No, it doesn't. Charlie Kirk was not turning on Israel. Stop coping, Jesus. To be fair, the wording of this poll is pretty deceptive. Israel is objectively an ally of the United States by definition and outwardly stated by all leadership. This is not really disputed. A better question would have related to whether or not they have too much influence in our politics. Whether or not that's not deceptive. They're just asking, do you think Israel is an ally? Like, yes, they could be on paper an ally, but people are smart enough to go, no, I don't think they are. It's just so much cope. Just cope and seethe, guys. You're not your wing of the party is not nearly as influential as you think it is. You really don't have the support of the people. At least you don't have the support of the TPUSA people. Now, 13.3% is still a large portion. Don't get it twisted, but it's not the you know it's not the majority, obviously, but it's still nothing to scoff at. We still it's still it's still not good that we've got a bunch of people who have these insane ideas in their head that like Israel killed JFK or that Israel killed Charlie Kirk or that Israel's responsible for all kinds of crazy shit. That Israel's responsible for COVID. I've seen stuff like that. You know, that Israel's the reason why we've gotten into every war we've ever got into since World War II has been Israel's fault. Like, Israel's not perfect. Israel does stuff that even I don't like. But come on, guys. Israel is, show me on the doll where Israel hurt you. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. Voter integrity laws remain a top concern for the base. Ending the Ukraine war finished dead last. Sorry, Zelensky. You are not high on our fucking priority list. Winning the midterms was number one, obviously. 63.9% of respondents saying that winning the midterms should be a high priority. Voter integrity and voter ID laws came in at second place, 9.3%. So just about 10% of people believe that it's a thing. The affordability crisis comes in third at 8.1. Mass deportations come in fourth at 5.3. Now I can understand people's like thinking with this is like if we don't win the midterms and everything else that comes after this doesn't really matter. Because if we don't win the midterms, we're not going to get voter ID reform. We're not going to get the affordability crisis handled. We're not going to get any more mass deportations. We're not going to get accountability for the deep state, which it seems like we're not really getting that right now. We keep finding evidence of malfeasance and fraud, and nobody's getting arrested. See, even I'm not happy about that. I think heads need to start rolling. But yeah, way down here, it's just whatever, reforming legal immigration and the visas. That's the H-1B stuff. Defunding woke universities. It's like we've got all this stuff. If we don't win the midterms, none of this matters. But yeah, with only 0.4% of respondents saying that it's a priority ending the Ukraine war. So sorry, Zelensky, but we don't give a shit about your problems. 90% of respondents endorse an immigration moratorium for the U.S. This is what I wanted to see. Now, I argue with people all the time. I'm not anti-immigrant. I'm a fan of Vivek Ramaswamy. I want him to be governor of Ohio. I hope that, and I hope he wins, and I hope he does a good job. I am a fan of his, and I don't care who likes it or doesn't like it. But I actually am I disagree with him on this in the sense that, like, I do think we do need to allow people to immigrate to the United States. I don't have a problem with the idea of immigration full stop, but I do think the way things currently are, we do need a temporary moratorium. I don't like. I'm sure that this poll didn't ask or didn't specify like length of time, but I'm looking for like 15, 20-year moratorium on immigration. Like no more new immigrants for at least 20 years. I mean, I know that's a big ask, but I do really think that needs to be what needs to be done. So we can fully secure the border, so we can deport as many, close to all the illegal immigrants as we can find. We just gotta, we gotta, we have a lot of house cleaning that we have to do. Would you support a moratorium on new immigration in the United States? 89.5% said yes. 10.5% said no. So I think this is good news in the sense that like there are people on the ground who again, this question doesn't necessarily preclude immigration from ever happening again. I don't think the majority of Americans are anti-immigrant full stop. Because if you don't have immigration, you don't have Donald Trump. People forget that I'm pretty sure it was his grandparents that immigrated from Germany. So he's only second generation. He's not a heritage American. You know what I mean? And if you're not to ask some people, if you're not a heritage American, you're not really American at all. So I don't think the majority of Americans believe that. They don't agree with that. You know. Yeah, this is the final piece. Radical Islam finishing as the number one threat to America is a testament to Charlie, who was deeply concerned with that topic in the final months of his life. Very few people were concerned about America's low birth rate, though, and they should be. So yeah, that's the thing. The birth rate crisis was pretty low on people's. It ranked 16th. This was a ranked choice vote um, for this, and low fertility was number 16. I think it definitely should be higher than that. But yeah, number one was with number one. The number one threat in this ranked choice voting system was Islam. Number two was socialism and Marxism. Number three was mass migration. I actually don't hate that those three are the top three because I would agree. I do think probably though that you know low fertility should definitely be higher. I don't know where, but it should definitely be higher. But yeah, number four was the economy. Number five was corrupt courts. Number six was election integrity. Number seven was political violence. Number eight was crime. Yeah, see, I think the fertility rate should probably rank higher than crime. You know what I mean? Like crime is bad. I'm not pro crime, but you know, it also should fertility rate should also definitely rank higher than lawfare. and it should rank higher than the national debt, which is at number 10. It should rank higher than the fentanyl crisis. Low fertility probably should rank below China. I do think CCP is a bigger threat than because they're having a fertility crisis right now. They just happen to have more people than us. So yeah, lack of patriotism ranks higher than low fertility. Nah, dog. I think we need to start having more babies and stop worrying about if people are patriotic enough. But yeah, those are the results of the straw poll. Again, I'm not entirely sure how many people attended. Um, and then again, of those people, you know, how how many of those people actually took the poll, because it won't be 100% of them. But still, this is probably the if the AmFest turnout look is as good as it looks, then this was a decent sample size. We got some good data. Um, Hopeful for the future. I think that the priorities of the American people are mostly in the right place. Um, so yeah, I overall think this is good news. This is good. There's good stuff coming out of this. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. Be sure to do all the algorithm stuff for me. The liking and the sharing and the subscribing and the following of the links and the throwing of the bones.